The nation's presidential envoy head to Washington to discuss the outcome of their North Korea trip with their American counterparts. The meetings will be critical in the next phase of ensuring the U.S. and Pyongyang engage in denuclearization talks. Moon Jae-in starts us off.
2 days after they returned from a historic trip to North Korea, South Korea's chief presidential envoys headed for the U.S. on Thursday to meet officials there and discuss the outcome of their meeting with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un earlier in the week.
At this point, I cannot discuss any details of this trip, but the most urgent issue for us is to make sure the United States and North Korea will engage in talks.
President Moon Jae-in's directors of National Security Office and National Intelligence Service are scheduled to meet with their U.S. counterparts over the next 2 days, and possibly even President Donald Trump. U.S. officials will be looking to see if the South Chung Eui-yong and Seo-hun reaffirm that the North Kim has promised to refrain from nuclear missile tests and to engage in negotiations on giving up its nuclear arsenal if its security is guaranteed.
Obviously, we're cautiously optimistic that there's some forward progress here, but we've been optimistic before, so we're going to have to watch actions and see if they match words.
That much was announced by the South Koreans upon return from their Pyongyang trip earlier in the week, but the South Korean leader's chief envoys have said they're carrying additional offers from North Korea's Kim Jong-un to pass on to U.S. President Donald Trump. They didn't announce what the plus alpha entails, but local media in South Korea are raising speculations. Among them, Pyongyang's vow to halt its development of intercontinental ballistic missiles, but dependent on, quote, U.S. attitude to the release of 3 U.S. citizens detained in the reclusive state. If Washington takes up on the offer, the American step likely will be to ask the North Koreans to directly reiterate that position, which could be done through a special envoy from North Korean leader Kim Jong-un.
Now, if that's reaffirmed by North Korea, it would probably represent a sufficient basis for the U.S. to begin talking with North Korea. But the ball is now in U.S. court. What's for sure is that the plus alpha that the South Korean delegation is carrying to pass over to Washington will serve as a make it or break it factor in what could potentially become a historic turning point. Moon Connyoung, Arirang News, The Blue House.